All right, we are back once again. This is the Principal Protocol with your boy Malcolm. Malcolm Locks everywhere, and you guys know the vibes. Man, I got a special guest for y'all today. Listen, I'm going to preface this with 2024 is a very interesting year, and some interesting things are going to happen in 2024. And with that being said, I have a gentleman who is more than qualified to be county executive, and I just want to have a good conversation with him today. Mr. Marcus Henry, he's been out here in these streets moving and shaking for quite a long time. And I'm, honored to have you on my platform. So, we could just have a conversation about who you are, what you've done, and what it is that you're trying to do.
That's wonderful, Malcolm. Thanks for that kind introduction, and thank you for our friendship over the last year or so. And you're, I think, a fairly modest person. I think I told you before. It's extraordinary the amount of work and impact you've had here in Delaware, Newcastle County specifically, with all the programs and work that you do. So congrats to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's just get started right from the rip. Marcus Henry, who are you? Who is Marcus Henry? If somebody was like, "Oh, I'm about to do a Google search on Marcus Henry," what they gonna find?
Well, I'll tell you my whole background, but the number one thing I am is a husband and a father. Which, the career is obviously important, the work that we do, but the most important thing is my faith in Christ, to be quite honest with you. So I'm a happily married gentleman for 21 years. Woo. I have 2 beautiful children. Yes, sir. That should be celebrated. I'll tell you that the trick, I think, to a good marriage is, and I'm not being facetious, listen, right? And I have my best advisor is my wife, Diliana. So she keeps me on point. Also with my kids, Alex and Gabriella. So I'm born and raised here in Wilmington, Delaware. Proud of that. I'm Catholic. We had a pretty fairly religious background. My mother and father were actually transplants from Texas. And moved here to Delaware back in 19.
I didn't know that.
You know that? Yeah. So Margaret Rose, we'll talk about in greater detail later, born in Texas, raised partly in Louisiana, and my father, John Henry. So they came to Delaware, and my dad was one of the early executives here transplanted to DuPont from Texas. Very accomplished in his own right. My Margaret Rose Henry, obviously.
Absolutely.
But they gave my brother John and I think, a very idyllic middle-class upbringing here in North Wilmington. I went to Catholic schools. I went to Immaculate Heart of Mary grade school, went to St. Mark's High School.
Okay.
My brother did as well, and we did, I think, well academically. I subsequently went to Howard University in D.C., the real HU, right?
The real HU.
The real HU, where I studied communications and political science. From there, I worked for some time in D.C., I came home briefly to Delaware, and then actually and I'm older than you, my friend. I'm 53.
Just a little bit. I'm getting there.
So I worked in city of Chicago government for an alderman as a legislative aide back in the mid 90s. And that kind of spurred my interest in government. After that time, I decided to go to graduate school, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship fellowship to University of Delaware in their Master's in Public Administration program. And we did very well. And that's where I met my lovely wife, Diliana, in graduate school. So after graduation, I worked for the Delaware State Housing Authority with the state government, worked with the Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Controls, their brownfields coordinator. Then went for a time in the private sector doing real estate development and finance for a small firm for several years. I then subsequently was appointed Director of Development for the Wilmington Housing Authority, where I assisted in repositioning their property portfolio of prospective public housing and mixed financing housing here in Wilmington. I was then appointed to Newcastle County as their head of community services. I did that under County Executive Clark appointed me originally. And then subsequently, County Executive Clark lost re-election. Tom Gordon won election and kept me on. And I served for a time as the Economic Development Director for Newcastle County under Tom. Tom Gordon lost the election to Matt Meyer. And so that's why I'm blessed that I'm an appointed official, but I've had the good fortune to work under 3 county executives in county government. So under the current county executive, Matt Meyer, I worked for 5 years running the Department of Community Services again. Community services includes community development and housing, library administration, youth and family services. We have a broad portfolio of programs and services that we offer. I left that employment 2 years ago to focus on this run for office for county. So that's some background. I should mention quickly, and we can talk about it more maybe later, I'm also a small business owner. My wife and I, about 10 years ago, started a healthcare practice here in Delaware. It's called Bright Bloom Centers, and we provide clinical support services with children with autism. My son, Alex, was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old, and my wife and I struggled to find him appropriate services that were available specifically in Delaware. So we started this venture back 10 years ago. We serviced 5 kids at that time. One of them was my son. We had 2 therapists, basically. And I'll fast forward 10 years later, we're now the largest provider of this service in the state of Delaware. We provide services to over 120 kids statewide. We have service centers in Wilmington, Milford, Middletown. We're also in South Jersey and Logan Township, Swedesboro. And we'll be expanding to Elkton, Maryland, and down in Seaford, Delaware.
Shout out to South Jersey. I was born and raised in South Jersey.
Yes, sir. A lot of development happening there, but it's looking different. A lot of families in need there. So that's my background. I think it suits well in terms of what the requirements are and experience needed to be county executive.
100%. And I'm glad that you have a breadth of experience, just within government, and government can be up, government can be down. How, in your mind, you running for a county executive, right? Like I said, you've just seen Newcastle County shift and shape in so many different ways. Through your experiences, what do you feel as though that you could bring to the office? Like that's something that the county executive position has never seen before.
Well, number one, experience, obviously, being in county government for over 11 years, running large departments, doing budgets, setting strategic planning, understanding the intricacies of county government and operations, how we do intergovernmental coordination with other jurisdictions such as the state and the city of Wilmington, Newark, and others. And I think where I lean in more now is my business experience and understanding, the business community, their needs and wants, and counterbalancing that with the public at large in terms of responsible growth and development, but also make sure we preserve open space and parks and other types of programming.
Oh, that's tough. Oh, that's a tough one right now.
Yes, that's why we have experience like that, my friend. It is tough. It's not easy. Not for the faint of heart, let me tell you.
No, it is not. It is not for the faint of heart. What are some of is there an experience that you can kind of like tie into you really wanting to go deep into, government? Was there like a life experience? Did you see something as you were growing up that was like, hey, this is something that I think I really want to pour myself into?
Yes. And a couple of different points in my life that kind of led me to this early in life. And this was told to me because I was too young. When my parents, as I mentioned, they moved from Texas to here to Delaware. This is 1970, right? So they're a middle-class family. They're looking for a house to buy, right? This is 1970. I'm going to say that again. So they go to this neighborhood in North Wilmington to look at a house that was for sale. And the person opens the door, takes one look at my mom and dad, and slams the door in their face. And they experienced that several times. I think you know where I'm going with that. So there was blatant, overt racism and discrimination with respect to housing. They could afford a house, they could get a mortgage, that wasn't the issue. But there was prevalent discrimination, not just against African Americans, but unfortunately at that time, even the Jewish population here in Delaware. So it's funny because we ended up living in buying a house in an area called Brandywine Hills, North Wilmington, which at the time was predominantly a Jewish population there, but there was like 5 or 6 Black families, including ours. And I mention that because I had a wonderful childhood growing up of assimilation, of getting along with different people, of good community. We played together, we taught together, we broke bread together. They would go to Catholic church with me. I would go to synagogues. That shaped me in terms of what I see and vision for what community should look like, right? Later on, this is just a few years ago, that really shaped my desire to run for office specifically this is going to sound strange, but it's true. I got COVID, okay? I got COVID 4 times in about a year. Yes, sir. I'm healthy, but I got COVID, doing my work in Newcastle County, and by the grace of the good Lord and medicine, I'm fine. But what it kind of wake up call for me was, hey, if you're going to do something, if you're going to run for office and effectuate the change that you see, it's time, Marcus. So I left a very nice position, as I said earlier, for Newcastle County government to focus on this run for office. Not just that, to laser focus and build a coalition of folks that support me to hopefully make sure we're successful this year, which is September 10th. Is the primary, and that's
the primary.
the important day, Tuesday, September 10th, right after Labor Day. In Newcastle County, the primary really determines the election because I'm a Democrat. Democrats heavily outnumber Republicans here in Newcastle County.
Yeah, 100%. And I like to get the context, because a lot of people just kind of don't give that context, right? Like, just call it spade a spade. A lot of people don't give that context as to those points in times in life where it's like, hey, I was always built to be this, and it just kind of like manifested as time grew on, right? Now you talked about having a wonderful childhood and just having that diverse perspective of people, right? In these times where you're talking about government and it's so polarized, and you got social media, and people are so focused on a presidential run, right? How could you just give us a couple of words around how that your perspective in terms of the diversity of people, how does that add to you? How does that add to your fuel and your fire when it comes to being county executive? And how do you kind of like put yourself in a position to kind of like bring people together as you're running for county exec, because things are just so polarized?
That's an excellent question, Malcolm. Thank you. I should mention I had a great childhood, and all that. I experienced a lot of racism too. I experienced some really unfortunate circumstances a number of times. That also shaped, obviously, the importance of what we're talking about now. And to me, we got to be able, we Americans, Delawareans, people in Newcastle County, to be able to talk to one another and have tough conversations about things, be it race relations, be it politics. To your point, what you said earlier, things are so polarized. And if we're going to bridge these differences, white, black, Republican, Democrat, we got to be able to kind of come together on so many different issues, but also recognize where we can have some coalition building on something, consensus building on these things. And that's how I operate, consensus building. I'm a pretty strong manager. I have strong views. But for me, as I said earlier, I think listening is so important. Listening and empathy for others, right? A lot of folks like to talk, but a lot of folks don't spend that same amount of time listening to folks and hearing their concerns. As an example, so I started this campaign early, like almost 2 years ago, back in April 2022. People asked me about that. I took over a year talking to so many different constituents, all up and down Newcastle County. And I know we'll talk about this probably later, but their issues and concerns with government vary depending on where they live and what their circumstances are. So to have that differentiation between issues of public safety, land use, youth and family services, or just concerns about the politics, being well versed in that and hearing from different groups about how we can address these challenges.
And I'm glad that you're talking about, public safety, land use, the access to the services, right? Now, with that being said, what are some of your top priorities, right? Like, matter of fact, even before we go into the top priorities, could you just kind of like go in depth on the land use piece, right? Because a lot of people in Delaware, it's like, oh, land, but they don't really truly understand why the land use issue is an issue. Can you go a little bit more in depth into the public safety as well?
Sure. And you may want to cut me off because we can talk a long time.
No, let's talk about it, because this is something that I just learned about last year in terms of land use for Newcastle County, Kent, and especially Sussex County. So this is stuff that I've just learned, but I want the people to have an understanding as to, if they hear land use, I want them to understand why it's such an important issue.
Sure. Thank you, Malcolm. So Newcastle County, now our governance is different from Kent and Sussex, where administration is different. One of the main priorities we have or duties in governance is making zoning decisions on behalf of Newcastle County. So that's zoning with respect to the type of use that's allowed, be it commercial use, business use, or residential use. We do the zoning approvals for what's called minor subdivisions, major subdivision plans that go through Newcastle County. Now, that's the role we play, along with some other things that connect with that. But we work in conjunction with the state, with state planning office and with DelDOT to make the determination if a business or area has suitability with respect to traffic impact, that it has suitability with respect to the type of use, but also to make sure that the traffic impact is studied carefully so it doesn't put undue burden with respect to the roads and the infrastructure needed for those roads. The state makes that determination with the infrastructure investment needed for certain types of development. They pay a portion of that potentially with the developer on some of these deals. It gets very complicated. It's important. We have what's called a Unified Development Code that sets out the parameters for these things, as well as we update every 10 years, give or take, a comprehensive plan that helps direct the focus of county government, where we want to see development and the type of development we want to see countywide. It's critically important, but it's in a coordination with the state government. We also coordinate to a certain extent, large planning initiatives with other jurisdictions like the city of Wilmington, Newark, and others. And economic development is critical for me with respect to the future of Newcastle County in partnership with Delaware. We always have to be forward thinking in terms of what we envision for a business opportunity. And I always lean into, and I know you'll like this, small business, right? Small business, also recruitment, but also small business retention.
Ooh.
Newcastle County, right? Retention. And there's various ways we can do that, which we can talk about later. But land use is probably, I think, the most important thing that we do. Right next to that is public safety, which we can talk about later. Public safety is not just policing. That's 911 operators, that's paramedics, and other support services.
So many people don't understand when you say public safety, their minds literally just gravitate towards cops, and it goes so much further than just policing, right? To exactly what you just said, like 911 and fire safety and all of the things, right? So could you just talk a little bit about you as if you were elected as county executive, how would you bring some improvements to the public safety in Newcastle County?
Well, broadly with public safety, I want to make sure we have appropriate staffing to deal with the needs and further demands on that service. Make sure we have enough 911 folks, make sure our service centers are up to date technologically. With policing, which is a whole other issue. Right now, an issue that we're facing in Newcastle County and the state and other jurisdictions is shortages in officers. We have an authorized level of 415 officers to patrol 500 square miles of Newcastle County. It's a lot.
That's
and
a lot.
We're down 50 officers right now. And there's reasons for that. There's retirements, there's transfers. But as you can imagine, which is a much deeper conversation, is we have to improve the police communication and accountability with the public. But you have to counterbalance that also with all these needs with respect to crime and other issues. So I think that's a tough job. And I want to have people in charge in policing, both from our director of public safety and ultimately the police chief, that are mindful of the community, that are accountable to the community and me, but also recognize that we have to be proactive in crime prevention and just how we do things operationally. So that's critically important.
Now
in 911, we have, we're responsible for all of Newcastle County in collaboration, I think, with the city. Make sure we're up to date technologically wise. Also with our paramedic runs to make sure we provide the local staffing and services there. And one more thing, you mentioned, this is really important, fire service. So there's not a county fire department per se. There are a number of local fire companies that are volunteer based that provide these services countywide in 20 plus different jurisdictions. We subsidize some of that expense for their operations along with the state and others. We need to figure out a better way to help fund them, but also to make sure the resources are there. So there's great coverage for fire prevention in the future. I mean, there is now, but county government needs to play a larger role in that. Because if we had to have a county fire departments, if you will, we don't have a budget to support that. That'd be excess of hundreds of millions of dollars.
These are some real big conversations that need to be had. So you spoke about small business development, and there's the bigger
Mhm,
overarching subject is just economic
mhm,
development in general, right? What
mhm.
have you seen improve in Newcastle County as far as economic development, and what do you see that can improve even more in
Mhm.
Newcastle County as far as economic development?
I know you know a lot about this subject matter as well, so
Mhm.
I'll defer to you on some of this. But from my perspective, um, I think the coordination has gotten better with respect to the different agencies, be it the Better Business Bureau with the SBA, with
Mhm.
other jurisdictions, with the state, with Newcastle County. And I think a lot was driven by that collaboration and coordination I saw improvement was during COVID. There was a significant amount of federal pass-through money that came to states and local governments to help assist businesses to stay afloat during the COVID crisis. I think the state and I think the county in particular did a great job with respect to allocating some of these one-time resources.
Mhm.
But coming out of COVID and like where we are right now, there's a lot of different agencies that help in these areas, for-profit, nonprofit, and especially the private sector with respect to banks and access to capital. Um, I think the county needs to be a little more proactive, specific to small businesses and technical assistance, but also
Mm.
make sure if there's opportunity to underwrite some of the loans that they may have to assist them in getting that access to capital. Because as you know, it's understanding a good business plan. It's that access to capital, making sure you can properly service your debt over the life and term of your loans, but making sure we provide both technical assistance and also, if we're appropriate, help with some of the financing for these things. I would
Oh,
much rather have 50 plus businesses every year be successful than worry about the next Insight or somebody else, for example, which we're happy for. But I love small business development, obviously.
how what are some of the plans in terms of to extract it to attract more of these businesses to Delaware? Because I know Delaware has, like, again,
Mhm,
a overarching goal
mhm,
in terms of attracting businesses to Delaware, big
mhm,
and small. What specifically can Newcastle County do to
mhm,
attract these businesses to have them come to Newcastle County and
mhm.
stay in Newcastle County and do business here?
Sure. So help incentivize actual commercial space for them to operate in, right?
Mm.
Help them, whether it's, and it's funny because I think there's a repositioning happening right now in commercial space here in Newcastle County. The market's changed. And I think there's commercial spaces that we can get involved with in partnership with the private sector and others to
Mm.
help cultivate repurposing of commercial space for small business, right? And create opportunities to hopefully lower the cost, at least initially, for some of them to operate their physical operations here in Newcastle County. That's one. Um, I think through our land use, which I mentioned earlier, assist with technical assistance with the land use approvals for permitting, for example. If they
Mm. That's a big one. That's a big
it's a
one.
huge one. That's a
That's a
big
big
startup
one.
cost too, right? Renovation expense, permitting fees, review time. Give a little special attention with respect to small business, but also targeted industries where we want to cultivate that, depending on the area here in Newcastle County. So I think we got to be a little more comprehensive, right?
Mhm.
But also just bridge those gaps where we see them for some of these small business folks. And small business could be, investors. I mean, not investors, but creating a bakery versus some accounting firm. I mean, it's broad, and we have to be, I think, flexible with the type of industries that we want to see, and flexible to help those folks about what they need.
What's up, gang? It's your boy Malcolm, Malcolm Box everywhere once again. Listen, I need you guys real quick to go and follow me on Instagram. That's right, Malcolm Locks on Instagram. I talk about esports, technology, business, and how to create content. I love all of the things. So if you would just take a moment and go follow me on Instagram, I will greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate you. 100% agree with a lot of the stuff
Mm,
that you said, because when it comes to small business, I think also, like, access to this information, right? I think that the more access that we have to a lot of this information, because at the end of the day, small businesses just don't know that they actually need these resources, and that they actually have access to a lot of these resources that you spoke of.
mhm,
I think that has a lot to do with, the actual retention of a lot of these small businesses here in Newcastle County, but not just here in Newcastle County, just throughout the state of Delaware, right?
Right.
Just understanding like, hey, I do have resources that I could utilize to help my business flourish a little bit more than what it already is. Now it's just so many things going on in Delaware. And when we talking about specifically Newcastle County, Wilmington houses the largest population of people throughout the state. I know you have overarching plans for Newcastle County, but specifically, what do you feel as though that you, if elected as county executive, what are some of the things that you feel as though that you could work with the city of Wilmington to implement to make the city, like, let's give top 3 things. What are some of those top 3 things that you feel like you could work with the city to bring some betterment to the city of Wilmington?
Thank you. And obviously, I think the health of the city of Wilmington, it affects the health of the entire state of Newcastle.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
We do have some existing partnerships and initiatives we work with the city through. I mentioned my time with community services. There's a lot of federal dollars that we allocate for nonprofits that operate in the city of Wilmington to allocate services, right? We fund their library operations in the city of Wilmington, a good percentage of that. For example, Wilmington Institute Library downtown, the one on North Market, we fund their operations, although they're not county libraries. We give direct funding through them, also through what's called state grant and aid for those services. We'll continue to do that, obviously. One of the things that I want to see from an economic development perspective is when they get designations like downtown development districts from the state or the type of economic development initiatives, I want us to partner to help from a planning perspective incentivize these areas for new development. Outside the city, for example, you have Newport, Stanton as an area, Route 40 corridor down in Bear. I know it's not talking about Wilmington, but we, the county, can play a role in incentivizing these things and helping these areas. Specific to Wilmington, I think, and also Newcastle County, and this is a broader subject, is our housing crisis right now.
I was going to get into that, but you can go ahead. I was going to get into that.
It does. Folks, and this is my area, honestly, real estate. And for me, there's a multitude of issues that I think we can try to cure. The market's going to determine ultimately what happens there. Market with respect to interest rates, right? Cultivating production depending on the price point of housing. The county plays an integral role in that, both from the land use perspective, from our subdivision approvals, but also I think we need to put an input from a zoning perspective of allowing for certain types of housing in various areas. And when I say affordable housing, yes, but also market rate housing, also the types of housing developments that we want to see, be it single family, multifamily, what have you. We have shortages in certain areas where, and I know you know this, Malcolm, and a lot of folks, that's what I've heard a lot on the campaign trail, is like, my son and daughter, they got a good job, they've been saving, they can't find a house they can afford. There's something wrong there. I think it's more on the supply side, not just interest rates. So what can we do to cultivate that? And that's not just building large, new subdivisions. It's repositioning potentially commercial areas for other uses. It's doing infill redevelopment in areas where there's older housing stock or things can be moved around. It's working with the private sector, with banks, in terms of how can we create financing and loans to help some of these folks, depending on the industry. For example, I would love to see an initiative to help teachers, right? Teachers or first responders or people in these industries, service industries, to help them get mortgages they can afford and good, safe, decent housing for them, right? That's a broad thing. And one of the things we're going to specifically do is look to revise Unified Development Code to where we can create these opportunities for housing cultivation and production here in New County.
Talk about that Unified Development Code, right? Because that's, like I said, a lot of these, I'm brand new to some of these terms, and I'm in the mix. Sure. I'm brand new to some of these terms, right? So break down that Unified Division Code and just explain what that means to a common person like what did that mean to me?
So the Unified Development Code in Newcastle County, which
I said division, Unified Development Code. My bad.
It's fine. It's a lot of acronyms. Let me tell you. So that sets the standard for how things are constructed, how things are built, where they're built. That deals with zoning. That deals with specification in terms of setbacks, construction standards, all those things. It deals with the density of how much housing is allowed in a given area, or the type of commercial development that's allowed via the zoning. It's very complicated. It's prescribed. but it's something I think that as county executive and working with council, we constantly need to revise and look at based on market conditions, but also what the needs are of the community, but with our constituencies and also our business community. And I have to pivot back this because, we need development, but we need responsible development. Okay. Responsible development.
Oh, you might ruffle some feathers with that one.
Responsible development, I mean, with respect to make sure we preserve open space. Make sure that we're mindful of constituents' concerns, our public concerns, that they have a voice, that they have a means of talking and having concerns, and that there's transparency in that process for people, right? That's why I'm fortunate that I've worked with 3 county executives. I've seen some things that were done well. I see some things like, we need to do things a different way. Because I don't think pro-development, smart growth is mutually exclusive open space. I think we just need to be smarter, engage the public better, and create better policies and procedures to deal with these things. And it's not just the county, that's the state, well, as I talked about. There's issues, for example, down in southern portion of Newcastle County MOT area where there's warehousing distribution centers that are being built down there, which I agree with. But I agree with it to make sure the traffic is carefully studied, that it's built in areas not too close to residential areas, and that there's and this is more of a state function, that there's environmental studies that are done to make sure we're not creating additional pollution or concerns down in these areas. So this gets complicated. And that's why when someone experienced like me that can talk to this and deal with it from a policy perspective, how do we cure these things so the public's happy, ultimately the business community can be happy too, but that we're just smart about it, right?
I think, and I'm glad that you said that, right? Because I think what happens is that a lot of people don't, I guess, fight fire with fire, right? Whereas when you're coming at it from a policy perspective, you can make change and growth a lot faster than a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of people that I typically see, but a lot of people sometimes come at certain issues from an emotional standpoint as opposed from a facts, numbers, and understanding the people along with the experience standpoint. So I'm glad that you are in a position where you want to attack a lot of these issues from a policy but also an empathetic position, because just a lot of people just don't have the ability to see both sides and be able to play the fence to make the most informed decision as possible. So I'm glad that you're speaking about it on that level. Now, with that being said, let's go back to the housing piece, right? Because when we talk about Wilmington, we talk about a lot. There's homelessness in Newcastle County, but in Wilmington, it's interesting in Wilmington because there's so many homes in Wilmington that don't have any type of residence in it, right? What are some of your plans to just really attack homelessness here in Wilmington?
What's up, gang? This your boy Malcolm. Malcolm Locks everywhere, and you know the vibes. Listen, I need y'all to take a couple seconds of your time and make sure you go follow me on TikTok. I'm posting so many short form videos every single day. I'm also streaming as well. So I play Fortnite, Call of Duty, and a plethora of other things with my guy, Silite Real, with Futures First Gaming. But anyway, I want you guys to go right now and follow me on TikTok. Yes, Malcolm Locks on TikTok. Make sure you go follow me there and let's have some fun.
Well, homelessness obviously is a complicated issue,
and I mean, of course, it goes further than Wilmington. Yeah, it's a Newcastle County issue, but Wilmington is interesting.
Yeah, so Wilmington, in fairness, they're their own jurisdiction. They have their own governance. They have their own initiatives with respect to how they deal with their housing priorities within Wilmington area. So we partner with them on some of these programs, but really it's the purview of the city of Wilmington government. I want to make that clear. However, homelessness doesn't know boundaries of Wilmington and Newcastle County. And so one of the initiatives this administration, my administration did was the Hope Center, where through COVID dollars, we purchased a hotel that really wasn't doing that well and converted that to transitional housing use to help this population. That was needed greatly during COVID because of the crisis of housing and obviously what was happening with COVID. We served thousands of families. Not only that, we created wraparound services at the Hope Center to help them with workforce development, healthcare, all these things to hopefully get them into suitable housing. Now, It's still an issue. We're going to have to make sure we have the budget to support the Hope Center and those types of initiatives. There'll always be some role we play in this thing, but I think you always need to look at sustainability plans for these types of initiatives. That's where my finance comes into play. Okay, can we afford it in the future? We've got to make sure that we can. And if we can't or something changes, how to reposition this to help in other areas, perhaps, right? So with homelessness, that's an issue that Newcastle County obviously is not going to cure alone.
Right.
We've got to work with the state. I think it's got to be a statewide initiative in collaboration with other jurisdictions and how we create additional housing units, and how we create the wraparound services needed to help this population, but also just where we're going to put these folks, in the future. And we have to be very careful about that, right? But if we don't get proactive, the county and the state and other jurisdictions, you see what's happening around the country right now, right? In areas like I was out visiting some friends out in Portland, Oregon about a year ago, and Portland's a beautiful city, but unfortunately, there's portions that are overrun with huge homeless areas in and around Portland. That's happening in Seattle and San Francisco and major cities. Delaware, we're small, but we got to deal with this. We got to deal with this holistically and how we tackle this. It's not easy, but we got to figure it out, because if we don't, we could have a much more serious issue.
Does we talk a lot about workforce development, right? And I kind of want to jump into workforce development from that homeless perspective. Does workforce development help with the homelessness? And then with that being said, what is your perspective on workforce development, and how is that going to develop if you were elected as county executive for Newcastle?
Workforce development is critical. I think with respect to homeless, yes, it's important, but none of this happens until they have housing, right? That's the challenge. Getting all these services and opportunities doesn't happen, or it's very difficult for it to happen if they're homeless.
Gotcha.
Getting them secure housing, be it transitional, what have you, then I think it helps save cost, but also just provide the economies of scale to even allow this to happen, right? What was the end of that question? I think I missed it. Forgive me.
What is in terms of if you were elected as county executive, right? What is your view on workforce development? We know that it's critical, but what's your specific view on workforce development and what needs to be done in Newcastle County in terms of building workforce development?
Sure. So I think the county has in the past and needs to continue to partner with agencies that provide workforce development. We provided space before at our libraries, for example, for different programs that offer workforce development initiatives. I think we need to continue to kind of drill down in this area. I'll tell you, an area I think we need to really drill down on is, trades, plumbers, electricians, automobile, all these, listen, these jobs are paying really well right now.
They really are too.
And, folks, look, I appreciate folks that want to go through 4-year college and do all these things. But, trades is a huge demand, and that's not going anywhere, right?
Never.
That's never going anywhere, Malcolm. And, I got a good friend who's an electrician. I got a good friend that are plumbers. They're on their sons and grandkids entering to this business because there's always a demand, right? You're not going to automate plumbing. You're not going to automate electricians, right?
You can't.
In these trades, you can't. Exactly.
You can't.
And I think, I don't know what the latest data shows, but I think that you've seen a decline, unfortunately, as it forecasts for people entering these areas. I think the county and others should help cultivate this as a possible career track for a lot of people. But also, look, and also tech, obviously. I know that's your specialty, tech.
Absolutely.
You're really good, my friend. I'm impressed. One of the areas that I'm really proud of in my time in county government is I worked with the county administration on this Code Differently initiative, right? My department, through our summer youth program, partnered with Code Differently organization to offer our summer youth kids that opportunity to learn coding, right? Through Code Differently. And I'm very proud of that work. We had kids that did office work, they did, work at some of our facilities, broad work experience, but to be able to expose them to coding and hopefully get them those opportunities, I'm very, very proud of. Our summer youth program, I know that's a separate subject. I'm extremely proud of the work the county's done in that area. I think we get the largest allocation of those dollars for summer youth. We help several hundred every year. We always need to do more, but it creates great opportunity for these kids for work experience. And with coding, I think it potentially, where they want to, career opportunities in this area.
Yeah,
I'm very proud of that. Very proud of that.
it's a ton of career opportunities in that area. And
Sure.
I want to go back to the trades piece
Yes.
where I have seen that when people learn about certain things earlier in their
Mhm.
life, they're a little bit more uh they're pushed in that direction a little bit more. They might go in that direction a little
Right.
bit more, right? How
Right.
do you feel about and this is kind of like on a segue into an
Mhm.
education conversation.
Mhm.
How do you feel about these kids learning these trades a little bit earlier in their school career, and how do
Mhm.
you feel as though high schools or trade schools or are addressing the needs for people to work in these trades?
Well, as you and I probably agree, we want to see cultivation of this opportunity. But here's a but for me.
Hmm.
I want to make sure we don't shortchange our kids either.
Hmm.
That you can be whatever you want to be, and we got to create that opportunity through educational system and just the support we provide so they can be whatever they want to be. If they want to be a plumber, that's fantastic. You want to be president of the United States, that's fantastic. You want to be
Hmm.
a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer, that's fantastic. And that gets a whole piece in education. I just want workforce development in some of these areas that we talked about, plumbing, electrician, what have you, that folks have the most broad opportunities available to them. And I hope the educational system and the supports they have lends itself to that, because that's one of my big concerns with public school education, is to make sure everybody gets a fair shake and opportunity.
What is the
Mhm.
education in Delaware? I'm just going to keep saying, I'm just going to
Mhm.
allude to the word interesting every time that I bring up another topic.
Right.
Education in Delaware is interesting, and Newcastle County also has a lot of very interesting statistics around youth,
Mhm.
especially in the city,
Mhm.
that are just failing. Not, I don't want to say failing, that might not be
Mhm.
the right word, but
Right.
just aren't performing as well as other counties throughout the country, right? What are some of the things that if elected as a county executive, what are some of the things that you want to implement to help
Great.
these youth, really achieve the things that they have the potential to achieve?
Thank you for this question. I want to be careful here. I'm a strong advocate for education reform in certain areas, but
Hmm.
the county doesn't really play a direct role at all with the educational system. However, because this is so important, I want the county to be at the table when there's discussion. Because one thing
Hmm.
we do is we collect the property taxes, right, on behalf of the county. So we're the repository for taxes that pay for these schools. That goes to the state, and they allocate with the Department of Education and other school districts how that's done. However, we have good public schools in Delaware. Let's not get it twisted. But we want to make sure that no matter where you live, that there's the feeder pattern in K through 12, wherever you track for your kids, they get the best education possible.
Hmm.
And honestly, I can't say that happens in every instance. And we're going to make sure that Delaware has a significant investment that we do make in education, but we're going to make sure that that funding, those allocations, trickles down appropriately to the education directly with these kids, right? And just from a facility standpoint, making sure the facilities are up to snuff for these kids, that they have access to all things, regardless of the school, for athletics, for art, for all these services, and also with after school programs that are also available. Um, it's a complicated issue and it's
It
tough,
is.
man. But Malcolm, it's just too important. And you hear the same thing like I do. That's what they say about us all the time: the schools, the schools, the schools, and some of the points valid. But I think as a small state, and like with my administration, as you were asking, I'm going to work closely with whoever the next governor is. I'll work closely with whoever the next mayors are of various Newark or Wilmington to figure this thing out, to work diligently to do this, because I think we could do so much better in so many areas. I want to be a part of that discussion.
Now being a part of that discussion
Mhm.
is, I know a lot of people talk about here in Delaware, is being able to reach across the aisle, right?
Mhm.
And being
Mhm.
able to have those conversations, with people who are in different parties and just have different
Mhm.
perspectives and morals and values, right? How do you, Marcus Henry, how do
Mhm.
you facilitate those conversations?
Like I said, I listen, I talk, I hear the other perspective and viewpoints, and sometimes you have these discussions and disagreements, but out of that can come, I think, creative ideas and initiatives with consensus. Right? Not always going to agree on everything, but to have that discussion with the other side, Republicans or others that may have the perspective that you do. And Delaware's small enough, I think we can have those discussions, I hope, to help address these issues that in theory could be bipartisan, right? I think everybody wants good schools. I think everybody wants their kids to have a good education. The issue comes how you get there and to make sure it's equitable and how those things happen, regardless of the color of your skin or where you live, what your zip code is. That's my issue. Regardless of your zip code, everybody should have the best education possible statewide, countywide too, obviously.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. How does Marcus Henry, you're currently running for a seat with the county government, which is, a big seat here in the state of Delaware. You're also running a business, you have a family, you have children, right? How does Marcus stay, balance through it all? Because, with me, and I'm being very transparent, I sometimes struggle with having that balance, running businesses and wanting to do for your family and all the things. How do you stay balanced through all of it? What are some of the things that you employ in your life just to maintain that?
Great question. Great question. Well, number one, I have a genius wife, right? Let me make that clear. That she runs our business operations. My wife Diliana left a very good career in banking to run our companies about 5-6 years ago. I just help with the startup. I help with some of the financing. It's a partnership, and to your point, Malcolm, it's a lot of work. And so I've been focused on my government career the last 5-6 years. My wife has taken the lead and done a tremendous job running our business operations. But to your point, and I think you can tell from me, I hope, I'm a multitasker. I like to get things done. I don't waste time, and I'm pretty honest and forthright with that, right? And I'm going to bring that energy to county government. So my 100% focus is county government and operations right now. It will remain that way. But through my prior experience that we talked about today, I can bring innovation and also a business perspective to county government, along with my experience, to hopefully effectuate the change and efficiencies that are needed in our government operations.
Man, that's you are definitely you're managing some things over there, right?
Sure.
I have found that understanding that I have a team that I could definitely, like you said, you're a team with your wife, right? Me understanding that I have a team and being able to delegate a lot of the things that I felt as though was on my shoulders, right? And being able to have that team to perform some of the things that you just can't. Now, you being a business owner, right? What are some of the things that you've found that you struggled with being a business owner as you've been running your business? Because for you to expand and have servicing 120 kids, that's an amazing thing, right? What are some of the struggles that you went through just trying to get that business to the point that it's to now?
And you understand this. Sometimes you only learn by doing, right? And I think if I can, in retrospect, looking back, which that's how you learn. I don't think I was well capitalized enough when I started, right? So meaning that I didn't have enough cash in reserve to cover expenses as we grew. And so I had to adjust year 2, year 3 to kind of deal with that. Also, when you expand, make sure your clientele is there, right? Have careful market analysis in terms of before you do this. And we did some of that, but I think we got more in depth in the future for our expansion. Understand your market, understand the client base of what you're doing. Now, I deal in health insurance. So health insurance, understand your funders and the reimbursement rates and the timing for those funds. So in any business, this applies, not just for me in healthcare, it's understand and constantly learn your industry, right? And understand the changes in your industry as they move forward, okay? And most importantly, have good staff. I should mention we service all these kids, 120, might be a little more, might be a little less at this point, but we have over 100 people that work in my companies. Therapists, administrative staff. Some folks have been with me since the start, even the first 6 months. So you build loyalty by being good, listening to your employees, and listen to them. And listen to them in terms of their viewpoint and perspective. I never get high and mighty like I know everything. I learn every day. I'm sure you're the same way. You learn from everybody. It doesn't matter that you learn, and I'm constantly learning. But in this process of communication, trial and error, and just things have happened, we've run a successful business thanks to my wife and the staff too, by the way, to be successful. but that's a continual process review annually, probably, right?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Well, I wanna segue again, right?
Mhm.
We know, well, everybody doesn't know who's going to listen to this podcast. Senator Margaret Rose Henry.
Yes.
I know she has shaped a lot of
Yes.
your political
Mhm.
career. Could you just give me some specifics, like after her having such a
Mhm.
strong and storied
Mhm.
career,
Mhm.
how does that mold you, and how do you see your career after seeing your mom having such a storied and very, very, very what's the word I'm looking for, strong
Yeah.
political career?
Yeah. It's obviously inspirational. Um, we've been, even before she got in office, we were always politically active, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And mom and my father as well taught my brother John and I the value of civic engagement and how important that is. And we did pretty well. Like I said, we're middle class, but we always engaged in the community, gave back, got involved in neighborhood issues, concerns. And I learned this whole thing about listening and talking to different folks. I learned that from mom because she's beautiful with respect to how she communicates with people and builds consensus on sometimes difficult issues. Mom was a trailblazer too, because, first African American woman in the state Senate. But also remind you, this was, over 24, 25 years. The General Assembly where she served looked a heck of a lot different then than it does now. So as an African American woman representing a portion of Wilmington, she had her challenges. I won't say racism, but a little bit of discrimination, a little bit of misogyny in some cases that she had to overcome. And then she took on tough issues, LGBTQ rights back 20 years ago, a needle exchange for people, other types of initiatives to help those in need that were not popular back then. And now these things are popping up the last few years, and she helped lay the groundwork, I think, for a lot of these things. So for me, it's courage, right? Courage in what you do, telling truth to power in some cases, right? But also being that change agent in your office, like I hope to do better by folks, to be accountable to people, right? Don't just go to get along. And for me, I want to be county executive. It's a great position, but it's an important position. And while I'm there, to make the changes necessary to better the quality of life of all people, right? And I'll tell you, this is probably not a smart thing to say. If I'm successful and I win, and I get 4 years and I do all the changes and I hopefully better folks' life, and I only can serve one term because of it, I don't care. Because while you're there, you want to make that difference, right? And I'm laser focused on county government, right? I just have to mention that. So, Mom, it's the politics, it's the fortitude to get things done, right? But also making sure you're having, an impact on your community and the work that you do.
Man, I every time that I see you, I enjoy having these conversations, and now even more so, more than ever, having this conversation. Right? What what are your? I like to kind of end the podcast with the principal protocols. Right? What are your top three protocols to life, right? If you could give the folks your top three protocols to how to live the best life, right? What are those three protocols that you have to live the best life?
Faith, whatever your faith might be, it's a guiding thing in my life, obviously, my relationships with Christ. Family, right? Family. You do right. Like I always think about this, and you've probably heard this. I look in the mirror every day, right? Every day I look in the mirror. I'm like, what did you accomplish? Whatever you did today, work or otherwise, can you look your kids in the face and tell them what you did and feel good about it? And if I can do that, then I know I'm doing the right thing, right? I don't know three or I don't know, but just make an impact. Make an impact. We only have a finite amount of time on this earth. Make a difference while you're here. Make a difference while you're here, right? And for me, separate from that, but just part of who I am, I think some of what you do, I am an entrepreneur at heart, right? I am. But I happen to love government service.
Right.
And I think this is a great opportunity to meld that entrepreneur experience and government experience to hopefully help a lot of folks that have the entrepreneur need. but also having the empathy to help all these folks that need so much services and help. So I'm just excited about this opportunity, and hope those are three things you talked about. But faith, family, and know yourself. Know yourself, right?
That's big. Self-awareness is
Yeah.
huge. It's interesting you said that. I'm reading this book
Mhm.
right now that talks about how important your self-image is to your self-esteem,
That's right.
called psycho cyberkinetics. I believe that's what it's
You
called.
get
But
me the name
anyway,
of that because I like to check that out, bro.
yeah. Literally, a plastic
Yeah.
surgeon
Mhm.
wrote a book on psychology. So
Mhm.
it's real interesting perspective. So self-awareness and understanding yourself is very important. Now, with that being said,
Mhm.
where can the people get in touch with you? You have social media. You got
Yes.
how do people
Well,
see
all
Marcus Henry?
thank you, Malcolm. So I remember correctly. Just please go to the website. It's all there. I don't want to get it wrong because I got my social media guys and everybody else. So marcushenryde.com. There you'll find information on our campaign. There's access to our social media through there, through Facebook, LinkedIn, and other methods. You can donate through that too as well.
But go ahead.
Please
Give
donate.
them some money. Give them some money.
Well, no, but it's important. Look, it's running for office
It's very important.
is very expensive.
Mhm.
We just had a disclosure, our annual financial report, and we did very well. I'm not going to tell you how much, but we did very well. You can look that up.
Mhm.
However, to be successful in this campaign, I'm running countywide, right? This is the second highest local official in the state of Delaware next to the governor, right? Because of the size of county government. This is going to be a very expensive race. And I'd appreciate $5, $10, whatever folks can do to help if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear more, the information on our website, I'm happy to come talk to various groups. I'm happy to have phone calls. I'm happy to come to events and talk about my vision for Newcastle County and why I'm running for office. But all information can be found at marcushenryde.com.
MarcusHenryDE.com, y'all. So make sure y'all go visit. You've heard what the man said. So yeah, Marcus, thank you so much for taking a few
Thank you.
moments out of your day
Thank
and
you.
bringing on the principal protocol and giving the people some of the things that they need to chew on and think about while they're going to the voting polls later on this year. So once again, appreciate everybody for tapping into the principal protocol. This is your boy Malcolm. Malcolm Locks everywhere. You know the vibes. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you.